Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopi Jana Ballava Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballava Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Asto Tarasata Shri Śrimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Asto Tarasata Shri Śrimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavadandi Ki Jai ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai Vaishnava Sangha Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to some devotees. All glories to the some devotees. All glories to the some devotees. All glories, Shri Shri Guru and Garanga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, which is entitled Dhruva Maharaj Leaves Home, text number 38. It's up here, yeah, verses there. Nunam bhavan bhagavato yongaja parameshtinaha vitundan attate vinam hitaya jagator kavat nunam bhavan bhagavato yongaja parameshtinaha vitudan attate vinam hitaya jagator kavat nunam bhavan bhagavato yongaja parameshtinaha vitudan attate vinam hitaya jagator kavat Vaishnavis. Word meanings, Nunam, certainly. Bhavan, your honor. Bhagavataha, of the Lord. Ya, that which. Angaja, born from the body. Parameshtinaha, Lord Brahma. Vitudan, by plane on. Atate, travel all over. Vinam, a musical instrument. Hitaya, for the welfare. Jagataha, of the world. Arkavat, like the sun. So this is Dhruva Maharaj continuing in his conversation with Narada. So Dhruva Maharaj says, my dear Lord, you are a worthy son of Lord Brahma, and you travel playing on your musical instrument, the veena, for the welfare of the entire universe. You are like the sun, which rotates in the universe for the benefit of all living beings. So I say, you say, my dear Lord, you are a worthy son of Lord Brahma, and you travel playing on your musical instrument, the veena, for the welfare of the entire universe. You are like the sun, which rotates in the universe for the benefit of all living beings. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Dhruva Maharaj, although a young child, expressed his hope that he might be offered the benediction of a kingdom which would exceed in opulence those of his father and grandfather. He also expressed his gladness that he had met such an exalted person as Narada, whose only concern was to illuminate the world like the sun, which rotates all over the universe only for the purpose of benefiting the inhabitants of all planets. Narada Muni travels all over the universe for the sole purpose of performing the best welfare activity for the entire universe by teaching everyone how to become a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, Dhruva Maharaj felt assured that Narada Muni could fulfill his desire, even though the desire was very extraordinary. The example of the sun is very significant. The sun is so kind that he distributes his sunshine everywhere without consideration. It's interesting, Prabhupada says the sun. You hear Krishna is so kind, devotees are so kind, but here he says the sun is so kind. We should think about that when we see the sunshine in the morning, how the sun is so kind to have appeared to illuminate the world. So again, Prabhupada writes, the sun is so kind that he distributes his sunshine everywhere without consideration. Dhruva Maharaj requested Narada Muni to be merciful to him. He pointed out that Narada travels all over the universe just for the purpose of doing good to all conditioned souls. He requested that Narada Muni show his mercy by awarding him the benefit of his particular desire. Dhruva Maharaj was strongly determined to fulfill his desire, and it was for that purpose that he had left his home and palace. Om Gyanatamiandasha Janan Anjana Shalakaya Chakshu Omnitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapanantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, appreciation to devotees who have dressed the deities so beautifully today. They always look lovely. Radha Govinda are kind of known across America, maybe worldwide, for their beauty and for being worshipped so opulently and so beautifully. So thank you for the pujaris that are helping manifest the Lord's beauty to the rest of us. So here in this verse, the wonders of bhakti and devotional service and devotees are further revealed to us. And Prabhupada elsewhere, he writes, perhaps it's in the first canto, he says something, paraphrase, he says they were grateful to Narada Muni and others, and then he says, for kindly appearing in the pages of the Bhāgavatam. He says like that, for kindly appearing. So here, Narada Muni has kindly appeared, Dhruva Maharaj has kindly appeared in the pages of the Bhāgavatam, just to help us understand more about devotional service, ultimately. So we really are very fortunate to have the association of these great historical personalities. They are historical, real personalities. And we read about these histories, we hear about the challenges that they faced. Dhruva is definitely facing some intense challenges. He was so hurt. He was so emotionally abused. He was so disregarded and minimized by his father. His stepmother, of course, was particularly harsh. But then he was even more hurt, as explains, because his father didn't stand up and push back. So it was pretty right. He was only 5 years old. You know, sometimes we feel I'm mistreated or I'm not appreciated or people speak harshly. All of us, it's the nature of this world. And it hurts, whether we're a materialistic person or devotee. You know, devotees, we're particularly trying to soften our hearts, which in some way makes you more vulnerable. You know, most people in this world, they put up big steel walls, right? They teach you when you're a little kid, right? Sticks and stones. They say that in the UK? American expression, UK too. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And of course, it's a lie, because they do hurt. So it's a way of kind of convincing myself, well, they may hurt, but I'm going to go on. And toughen ourselves up, right? The men have the added burden of being told, you know, big boys don't cry. There was a presidential candidate, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, that he was interviewed. He was in a snowstorm, and they asked him, I don't remember the questions or the context, but they asked him about some difficult thing. It was snowing, and the snow was landing on his face. And I'm not sure what they say in hindsight, but either he actually cried or the snow melted and looked like he cried, practically finished his political career. Because big boys don't cry. How do you elect a guy that cries, right? So there's that added pressure on men. You know, we're not supposed to have feelings, which of course we do. So Dhruva Maharaj, he's got feelings, as Prabhupada says. He was determined to fulfill this desire. He was hurt bad. And he went to the forest, not to see Krishna, to ask him, please engage me in pure devotional service. His desire was, Krishna, thank you very much for coming. That's his desire. Please give me what I want. So those are challenges we understand as aspiring devotees. Those are challenges. And he had struggles. So we learn about these historical personalities, the challenges they faced, the struggles they had. Here we're going to follow Dhruva Maharaj through the whole process of getting the association of Narada Muni, Narada trying to instruct him, Narada having to change his instructions according to what Dhruva was able to understand, Dhruva's determination. And at the end he sees Krishna and he realizes, what was I wasting my time for? Who wants a kingdom when I see you? So the whole evolution of that is revealed there. And how the devotees, ultimately, they're benefited by Krishna and by his devotees. So hearing these pastimes, it actually helps us, studying the Bhāgavatam and other literatures, it helps us in a lot of ways. Of course, it purifies us just by hearing the sound vibration. It's explained, we become purified. And also, it helps build our faith, because sometimes we face in our own lives different struggles, different challenges, different problems. You know, friends betray us sometimes. People don't give us credit sometimes. People steal things or steal honor from us. Just like Dhruva Maharaj had his honor stolen. He's the prince. And he's told, you can't sit in your father's lap. I mean, what kid's told you can't sit in your father's lap? I mean, just imagine that. If your mother or stepmother told you can't sit in your father's lap, you're 5 years old, boy or girl. That's really painful. So he responded to that. So it gives us faith in how Krishna intervenes in our life and understanding how the whole world works and how it's ultimately meant, every experience is meant for our good. We gain a lot of practical insights that we can apply in our own lives. We start seeing more and more how the Lord works in this world, which helps us. We start seeing how Krishna works in the lives of others. Particularly, again, we're talking about in the pages of the Shastra, we start seeing, wow, maybe he's doing the same thing for me. You know, like, oh, he did this. Well, something happened to me that maybe seemed okay or not okay. Maybe that's Krishna doing the same thing for me. Maybe there's a lesson for me to learn here. Maybe, like Dhruva, it doesn't help to just get mad. Maybe there's also something behind the scenes for me to benefit from. And of course, we learn how we should act towards others. We try to learn how we should act towards others. So here it's particularly mentioned, there's such a beautiful analogy is given, that Narada Muni is like the sun, that he goes everywhere for the welfare of others. And it's interesting because it's expressed in a few different ways. I was noticing, rereading it, that his only concern was to illuminate the world. His only concern. To illuminate who? The world. That's a lot. In what way? Like the sun, which rotates over the whole universe, only for the purpose of what? Of benefiting the inhabitants of all platforms. Then Prabhupada again says, Narada Muni travels over where? The whole universe. Why? For the sole purpose of what? The best welfare activity for who? For the entire universe. It's like he's kind of like restating 6 or 7 times this same point, that Narada goes everywhere for the welfare of everyone. And then Prabhupada's this wonderful insight that the sun is so kind. The sun is so kind. So what is that? What is that kindness? It's important for us to understand in terms of how Krishna is kind to us, because sometimes it seems like maybe he's not. We understand the universe, ultimately Krishna's creation, ultimately it's for our own good. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily seem like that. So what exactly is that kindness? What exactly is that welfare? Well, again, explained in more detail here to help us understand what's our relationship with Krishna. I was saying that's the ultimate welfare of every living entity. So as Vaishnavas, as aspiring devotees, as devotees been practicing for 1 day or 1 year or 1 lifetime, this is the faith that we're cultivating. We have belief in that. Maybe not pure belief, but we have deep faith in that. It's our experience too. We all get little glimpses. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have at least some glimpses sometimes of how awakening my relationship with Krishna is, really the best thing for me. So we have that faith, we have some experience, we have the knowledge. It may initially be somewhat or largely theoretical, it gradually becomes realization that that is the best. And that although it seems harsh, it's our message to the world that there's no real happiness here. There's no real happiness here, ultimately, without knowing who we are and who Krishna is. So why? Somebody could challenge, well, why is that? Well, in the ultimate sense, because it's who we are spiritually. Prabhupada gives this wonderful example, like a fish out of water. You can't make the fish happy outside of water. And in addition to that, in terms of more of our practical experience, everything that's achieved in this world, Prabhupada uses this nice word, flickering. It's flickering. We all see that. You get a new car, it's like, wow, this is great, until you get in an accident. And then, and the fancier car you have, the more it costs you to fix it, right? If you have like a crummy old car, you get in an accident, it's like, nobody will notice that dent. It's already dented on the other side, who cares? And, you move on. If you got a new car, the littlest tiny mark, like I live in an apartment, and to save a few dollars and a few inches, it's not very wide parking lots. And I drive a little car, I have a little Prius, it's not big. But practically, every week you come out there and there's another mark, there's another nick in the door. And, you feel like putting a sign on your neighbor's doors, please open your car more carefully. But if you have an expensive car, like I remember having some friends that had really expensive cars, like a new Porsche or something like that. You get a scratch, it's not $100, it's like $3,000. So the same thing that brought you some happiness, it turns around and it brings you distress, like this microphone. It seemed to me bringing some happiness, but now it's bringing distress because I can't see the page anymore. But I'm going to try. Yeah, you're really testing me here, bro. You're blocking my notes. Yeah, but I'll try to make sure you can. I speak clear so you can hear. So it's described as flickering, and Krishna gives example in the Gita. He's so wonderful at giving examples we can understand. He says like the summer and winter seasons. We all have experience of that. I live in Washington, and we pretty much get all 4 seasons. And, every spring, you got to take out your summer clothes and put away your winter clothes. And the later you put away your winter clothes and get out your summer clothes. And the way the climate's so screwed up, you got to do it 2 or 3 times. It's like, what happened to the warm weather? I thought this was May, right? And it's like, what's happening? It's not supposed to be. Maybe today will be nice. It's not supposed to be this cold in New York City in May. So it's explained, and we see it all around us. Whatever happiness we achieve in this world is described as flickering. It doesn't last, and therefore the acharyas say it's not real, which is heavy. It's a heavy thing. Whatever happiness you achieve here is not real. But what does that mean? It means it's not real because it's not lasting. It's just like we have in our tradition. Material opulence represented by who? Lakshmi, who's well known for being what? Chanchala, right? She comes and she goes, right? So one day, I was in India at a retreat, actually it was a GBC retreat, and we were invited to the home of some very affluent members. And of course, we know, at least in India, when people are affluent, they're really affluent. This is like one of their 6 homes, and they were there for a couple weeks. And we had a little bit of time, and I was looking in their library. I like to look at people's libraries. I'm not so much a scholar. I read the books they're reading, but at least I like to look at the titles. And they had books like I'd never seen before. I didn't even think they existed. And the books were things like, I don't remember the titles exactly, but they were things kind of like how to keep wealth in your family once you've inherited it. And how to not lose your grandfather's money. And how to enhance the gifts you've been given, And it just dawned on me, wow, this is a level of anxiety I've never had to worry about. I mean, God bless my parents. They gave me a lot of good things. They didn't give me any money. I mean, when I was a kid, but when they left, I didn't get anything. So just imagine the pressure. You're in a family of millionaires or whatever, and your father founded this company or your grandfather made this great, amazing discovery, and your family's got millions of dollars, or these days billions of dollars. Now, what are you going to do? Right? It's like I was with Irma at the communications conference, and she said something that I hadn't ever thought about before. It's like, of course. She said, why do you think these kings, there's so many histories of the kings, they're so uptight about sons, isn't it? There's so many stories, like they don't have a son. You know, it's kind of like, hey, some people have kids, some people don't have kids. What's the problem? You know, get over it. But for them it means, what does it mean if the king has no son? Generally. No succession, and then what happens? Civil war, isn't it? If there is no successor, there's a war coming. So you're the king. You've been raised your whole life to think that it's your duty to protect the people, maintain order, give guidance to the people. You're supposed to care for them like the father. And all of a sudden, there's nobody to turn it over to. And you know when you leave or when you die, what's the plan? I don't have a son. There's going to be competition, like in England, right? The distant cousin's going to get together an army and come in and say that it's my kingdom, and the other cousin's going to say no, the Pandavas, right? Because there was a whole, Dhritarashtra was saying, well, it should have been my kingdom, but because I was blind, I couldn't get it, and therefore it should go to my, it's hell. So that's why it's like, yeah, wow, I never thought of that before. It's not just some kind of selfish thing, that's probably there too, but it's what happens next. So this idea, like, wow, are they rich? It must be like, boy, they must be happy. They got a whole level of anxiety I don't have. The king, wow, he controls over everything. He must be completely peaceful and like full of joy. He's worried. Even if he's got a son, he's worried. Is he going to be able to rule the kingdom? I mean, the old days, right? Not so many kingdoms these days that are of political consequence, but is he going to be able to rule over the kingdom? Or like in England for some period of time, it's she, when the queen still had quite a bit of power as well. So therefore, it's described. It doesn't matter. We may be, you can be the most beautiful woman in the world. People fall at your feet. They gush over you. They want you on the cover of every magazine, and they want to know every skin cream you use and everything you do every day to try to keep yourself young. But I'm not going to be young for very long. And then you read all the stories about the big starlets and beauty queens in Hollywood, and they know the clock's ticking, tick, 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 tick. At a certain point, they don't want me in those movies anymore. Added pressure. Similar for men, but not the same way. Added pressure. So you can be very beautiful. You can be very famous. I often remember a movie I saw before. I was a devotee. I was like in high school. I think the name of it was Downhill Racer. And I used to ski and was in my high school ski team, so I related to that. So there was a movie about this guy his whole life, and he's trying to, become better racer and win the world championship. So like the final scene of the movie, as I recall, he finally has victory, and he's at the bottom of the hill. He's got this best time, and he's got the whatever. And there's this whole huge crowd around him, and they're cheering him, and he's feeling happy, and I'm important, and the TV cameras are all there, and he's finally at number one. And then the crowd starts to quiet down, and you're not quite sure what happened. And what's happened is there's a young hotshot Italian guy who's halfway down the course, and they can do it these days. He's 2/100ths of a second ahead of what he did, and if he keeps it up, he's going to win. So all of a sudden, he's like in the middle, and then everybody ignores him, and everybody's looking up the hill, and then he's coming down, and then he wipes out. And then everybody goes back, ha, you're the king, you're the hero. And he just really implants this deep impression, for today, by like they say, the skin of your teeth. Because if he hadn't fallen, we'd be cheering him, we'd be ignoring you. So you get this sense of it's so flickering. Comes and goes. And of course, it doesn't satisfy the deepest needs of the soul. And therefore, it's described, people are never satisfied. And we see this in the world around us. They have this expression, right? The grass is always greener on the other side of the hill. Because partly it's not green enough on this side of the hill, and we want to go someplace else. So an example came to my mind when I was reading this. I was thinking just like a parent. A lot of parents here. We know that if you give your children, Mommy, Daddy, I want more sweets. I want more ice cream. I want more candy, etc. If you give them all the sweets, if you give them a nice playground, if you give them a lot of toys, if you indulge them in so many ways, and you don't get them a good education, what kind of parent is that? That's not a very good parent. Because the temporary things, a child doesn't have so much a sense of the future. The temporary things we may give them don't really lead the way to their longer-term happiness. So in the same way, the Shastra, the story of Dhruva is helping us to understand the temporary things that we may aspire for, the things that my mind clings onto, the things that I maybe, desire very strongly or lust after or, feel I really, really got to have. Like I had a job when I was a college student. I worked in a factory one summer, and one of my fellow workers used to pick me up and give me a ride to work. And as I remember, every morning, so it probably wasn't every morning, but it was a lot of mornings, he talked to me about how I'm going to get me a Harley. That was his aspiration. He was going to get himself a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and he was saving up for it. He was working in a hellish job to save enough money to buy a Harley Davidson motorcycle. And I didn't have the heart to tell him, and I probably didn't know how to communicate to him. There was a lot of guys at that factory that already had Harley Davidson motorcycles. I knew a bunch of them, and they were as miserable as everybody else. And I remember thinking, why are you so convinced a Harley, I wasn't a devotee or anything, but just it was so obvious. Why are you so convinced a Harley Davidson is going to make you happy when you know so many people that have a Harley Davidson motorcycle and they're not happy either? Well, you're going to spend the next 2-3 years of your life saving money to buy a motorcycle. Why? So they don't actually, these things, they're described as unreal because they don't actually lead us to real happiness. So in the same way, in a spiritual sense, in a bigger context, Prabhupada describes in a purport in the Bhagavad Gita, he says something very heavy. He says the so-called feeling of happiness that we experience in this world is the enemy of the conditioned soul. We're all trying to fight against the pain, right? Like the trouble, the suffering, the humiliation, the difficulties, that's my enemy. I got to overcome those things. That's certainly the way the materialistic person thinks. But Prabhupada says, no, the feeling of happiness is your enemy. Why? Why is the feeling of, Philip, why is the feeling of happiness my enemy? It seems like doesn't make sense at all. Why? Very good. It keeps us bound because we spend all energy chasing all these temporary things. So, therefore, the parent that just takes care of, provides their kids all their short-term things that they think they want is not actually a loving parent, although they may think they are. There's so many books you can read about overly indulgent parents. They even have names for them, overly indulgent parents, and how it's harmful on the young person. But conversely, at the same time, we understand if a parent, modern day example, if a parent educates their child, sends them to the best school, really pushes them, like they have this term, I don't know if it's still popular, tiger moms. Heard that before? Tiger moms, right? They're like, over their kid and pushing. Can be the father too, but tiger mom, they push their kid to achieve. But they don't give them any toys. They don't give them a playground. They don't give them any affection. They just push. I was in the Pune temple maybe 3-4 years ago, and Radhe Shyam Prabhu, the temple president, he was giving Bhāgavatam class, and he told everybody something that just happened. He said, because they have a lot of programs to outreach to a lot of the college students. And recently, one of the colleges there, I guess they have this word topper. Is that a common word? We don't use that here so much. Like the top student, right? Number one, highest grade point, going to get the best job, going to make the most money, going to be the most successful, materially speaking, jumped out of a building, committed suicide. And it really touched me because he was saying it with such pain in his heart. he said, we should think, why didn't we help him? You know, you kind of think like, okay, I don't know how this guy's a name in the newspaper, and it's very sad. But he was saying, no, we're supposed to help him. We didn't reach him. In this case, it was a him, sometimes her. But he was saying, like, why we didn't reach him? Why didn't we? We should feel like, you know, people are suffering, they're not happy, and we didn't reach out to him. So this need for us to reach out is critically important, and to understand this example. Narada Muni did not tell Dhruva, you're an idiot, you're a fool, you're a rascal, you're stupid. How come you want a kingdom? You should surrender to Krishna. That's all you need, just like chant Hare Krishna, you know, get up early, go to Mangalarti, and give up this stupid desire. Is that what he told him? He didn't tell him that. He kind of started and said, hey, these are all foolish things. And Dhruva said, well, thank you very much, but, you know, thank you very much. Take those exalted instructions elsewhere, because they don't work for me. And then Narada was understanding, okay, he's not ready for that. So therefore, he gave him the appropriate instruction. So children, we know, if they only have like push, 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 work hard, studied, as possibly this young man that took his life did, they grow up stunted. And they grow up oftentimes socially inept and withdrawn and vulnerable and sometimes depressed. And you know, there's whole study. I recently read something about human relationships or something for communication, and they gave reference to some famous study years ago. They couldn't get away with it these days, but there was some study. Somebody was called in. There was some home for like orphans, and they particularly had noticed that in some orphanages, although the kids were well clothed, well fed, and all, you know, cleaned and all that, the babies had a much higher rate of dying than other orphanages, and they couldn't figure it out. So they brought in like an outside expert to help them understand what's going on here. You know what they discovered the difference was? Anybody know, or you want to guess? Yeah. The babies that were dying, they were clothed, they were fed, they were changed, all this stuff. They were never held. There was no human baby to mother, baby to nurse. They lacked that emotional support. And they were literally dying at a higher rate. Enough of a difference in rate that it came to, like, you know, government authorities are trying to figure out what's going on here. So we have these various needs, ultimately spiritual needs, but like here we see with Narada and Dhruva. Narada was helping Dhruva achieve what he wanted, which is, I think it's even described like a childish desire, an extraordinary desire. Narada was helping him achieve that in a way that was connected with, that was ultimately leading him to Krishna. So he helped him fulfill his desire, and he also gave him pure Krishna consciousness, which is, again, it's like, that's why I start out, we're so fortunate to study bhakti, because it's really wonderful, because it's like, yeah, okay, you have the desires of the world, whatever, pursue them in a, as it described yesterday, an honest way or a sattvic way, and add Krishna, or else ultimately it's not going to really make you happy. It's both, you know. Krishna consciousness is not a win-lose scenario. It's a win-win, really. People in the world are oftentimes looking for a win-lose. I win, you lose. You know, what's the term they have? There's a limited number of resources or some term like that. So I got to get everything I can, take as much as I can. You know, my team wins, your team loses. Sorry, Charlie. Better luck next time. You know, and that's not our philosophy. So as servants of Narada Muni, we hear all the time we're meant to be servants of our previous acharyas, and we think of Prabhupada, maybe Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Lord Chaitanya. Narada Muni is our previous acharya. He's in our line, a little ways back, but he's in our line. So when we hear about him and how he interacted with people, he's one of the people we're supposed to please. We're supposed to try to please him. And it's really kind of marvelous because Prabhupada describes here about how he's appeared on these pages to benefit us and to understand him. So we should really try to understand what was his mood, how can I follow in his footsteps, how can I please him, what was his purpose, what was his mood, and it's described in the purport. Doing good to all conditioned souls, that term is used. Doing good, like it's like, you know, what's the purpose of your organization? Well, we help. As a student, I was like going from group to group to group, like, what do you guys do? Well, we're saving the whales. What about the monkeys? Now we don't help them, you know. We're working on black liberation. Well, that's great. Black people have been abused horrifically. What about the Latinos? Well, we're concerned about Latinos, but I mean, we can't do everything, right? You know, we're working on the environment, right? We're working on, like these days, I go to some biodiversity conferences, okay? Like, well, what about the climate? That's something, we don't have time for that, so that's somebody else's problem. But devotees, it's like, supposed to do it all. Not that we can directly put our time into it all, but as Prabhupada says, you treat the root, you water the root of the tree, and all the branches are benefited. How? By helping people, leading them to Krishna, and understanding their relationship to Krishna. So, as a great master and as an expert, Narada Muni is giving this example of trying to really understand where his disciple, where this young boy who he's met, who he has the opportunity to instruct, he's really trying to think, how do I get to him? How do I understand his consciousness, his moods, his desire in such a way that I can help him, as Prabhupada said, time, place, and circumstance, how we can help him make advancement. And Narada Muni is really amazing because when you think about who else were some of his famous disciples, Narada Muni. Vyasadeva, pretty important person, right? And what did he tell Vyasadeva? He said, you've written all these amazing scriptures, well done, but you missed Krishna. You missed the essential point. I mean, so you're talking a very elevated disciple there that's compiling the Vedas, and he's telling him he missed the point. Who else were some of his disciples? Prahlad Maharaj, again, a 5-year-old boy who he's instructing, by instructing his mother, he's instructing him, and we can see by the association of Narada Muni what an exalted devotee. But who else is his disciple? Mrigarhi, right? So what did he tell him? He's telling Vyasadeva, hey, I mean, in American terms, it's like, you know, get with it, you know, get rid of that stuff. Write about Krishna, right? Get rid of the other Vedas. It's superficial. Write about Krishna. What did he tell Mrigarhi the hunter? No, that's not what he told him first. Archita Prabhu, my elder brother, forgive me for my bluntness. What did he tell him first? Kill him. Isn't it? Because what was he doing? Half killing him, leaving him like screaming in pain, and he's following this trail of half-dead animals, thinking, who is such a cruel person? So he tells Mrigarhi, at least kill him, right? Make some progress towards not making so much suffering in the world. Make some progress towards Krishna. Make some progress towards a conscious being. And I'm thinking we have the example, which I'm sure most of you have heard. Prabhupada in San Francisco, Malati brought home the little Jagannath. Prabhupada said, go back and get it with their others. And they said, yeah, there's 2. They brought him back. And Prabhupada said, anybody can carve. And Shamasundar said, I can carve. So he's carving Jagannath in his apartment. Prabhupada comes to inspect, see how things are going on. And Shamasundar, who I believe actually was Shamasundar at that point. He wasn't Bhakta, so he was Shamasundar. And Prabhupada came to inspect. What did he find along with the deities? He found a pack of cigarettes. Where were they? On top of the deity's head. And as I recall, Prabhupada took his cane, he flicked them off, and he told Shamasundar, don't let something that small come between you and Krishna. What an instruction. Don't let something that small come between you and Krishna. And then you know what he told him? Who remembers? He told him, you rascal, you fool, I reject you. You're no longer my disciple. You're violating my trust in you. What kind of rascal are you? Don't ever touch another cigarette the rest of your life, or else. What did he tell him? You remember? He told him, just smoke one less a day. I don't know how they do in England. I think in the States, at least when I was younger and wasted my money and my lungs, there were 20 cigarettes in a pack. So it's okay, so smoke 20 today, 19 tomorrow, 18 the next day. Somebody do the math. That's a lot of cigarettes. So you think, what if the founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is telling his disciple to smoke, 222 cigarettes or whatever it is? What's that all about? What kind of guru are you, Prabhupada? He's a guru following the footsteps of Narayana Muni who understands what's the need for the next step towards Krishna. So these are our acharyas. These are the people setting the example for us. And without that mercy, we should all be a little honest. We wouldn't be here. If Krishna looked at us with like high standards, forget it, as they say in America. Very sophisticated place. You've noticed our British cousins so far. Forget about it, right? It would be like, Krishna, can I spend? Forget about it. You get lost. But Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada, so kind. So we should, again, as I mentioned, we take enthusiasm from this. Our faith gets deeper in this. We build greater trust. We develop knowledge. And we also get an example of how we should act. So in terms of our reaching out as servants, we should also think when we meet people, how can I help them? Just like you have kids, how do I give them Krishna? But you better give them toys. You didn't give them Krishna toys, but if you don't give them toys, you can be a tiger mom. And we saw this in the early years of our movement. A lot of parents, we were pretty immature, made a lot of stupid mistakes. I'm supposed to practice austerity. My children should also practice austerity, and they grow up hating Krishna. Not really Krishna, but they hate you. And you represent Krishna. I have a lot of friends that at the age of 60 or 70 are trying to rebuild the relationships with their kids because they didn't show them the two sides. They tried to give them Krishna, but they didn't try to give them, they didn't understand the balance. I can remember like when I was a young devotee, some of the people in the temple were really heavy. I mentioned the other day, I was talking with some devotees yesterday, that, I remember I came home from Harinam one day, my personal locker was empty because they helped me out. All the personal effects that I had when I moved in the temple were gone because they realized we need to take all your stuff and throw it in the trash. And they came really close to trashing my Krishna consciousness because there was no respect for me. They were so puffed up to think they knew what's best and throw away all my stuff before I'm ready to give it up. And because there were other devotees that I could go to and say, what the heck is going on? And they say, well, they meant well. There's a few people over the top and kind of helped me digest it a little better. Okay, I hung in there a few more days. So we have to be careful in presenting Krishna consciousness to others. It's not, prepackaged. It's flexible. Even in New York, it's described, Leela Mrida, where the first temple was, there was a donut shop down the walk. And Prabhupada used to walk by sometimes and peek in the window, see if any of his disciples were inside eating donuts. And if there were, they'd kind of duck behind the tables. And these days there's vegan donuts. I don't think there were vegan donuts, right? There weren't any vegan donuts in those days. So that's the mercy of Prabhupada. It's the mercy of Krishna. It's the mercy of Narada Muni. As we say in communications, we have to understand the needs, interests, and concerns of others. So end with that. The bhakti process is so wonderful that it's powerful enough. Just like Prabhupada says that there's a big fire, it can digest anything. So the Maha Mantra, the process of Krishna, the process of bhakti, the darshan of the deities, the association of devotees, it's so powerful, it can take anybody. We know there's different ashrams and regulations and things for people, different stages of life, but this basic idea that everyone can actually get the mercy of Krishna. Krishna, Lord Chaitanya wants to give his mercy to the most fallen. Love that expression, those verses in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He broke open the storehouse of love of Godhead, and he didn't discriminate who was fit and who was unfit. Like, wow, thank you, Lord Chaitanya, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. We should think like that. And we should be very careful if we find ourselves thinking so-and-so's not fit. Hey, wait a minute. There's one story, I know this was a story I heard recently, I don't know its source, but it's appropriate, of a man who owed a lot of money to like the king. whatever, 300 gold coins or something. So he went to the king and he pleaded for his mercy, and the king was moved and he forgave him. So then the man went outside and later met someone who owed him 20 silver coins. And he chastised him severely. You owe me these coins. You need to pay me, American expression again, pay up, buddy. And somehow it got back to the king. The same man he'd forgiven was not willing to forgive a lesser debt from someone else. When the king called that back, he called him in and severely punished him, put him in jail or something. So, it's a mundane story, but we should think like that. I've been given so much kindness, so much compassion, so much mercy. Let me carry a little bit of that in my heart. Let me forgive the offenses of others as best I can. Let me try to be that person who looks around the room and tries to find that person that maybe nobody's talking to, that person that comes to the Sunday feast that nobody's paying attention to, that person that's trying to chant and maybe they're struggling and whatever. Maybe they're eccentric personality, there's something that stops people from getting so close to them. Let me be that person that helps them. Because first of all, I want to do that because Narada Muni's doing that. But also, maybe if Krishna shows I'm trying to be kind to others, maybe Krishna will give me a little extra kindness too. Because I'm trying. And I need all the help I can get. We all know that. So I'll stop there. Any questions or comments? Jan Mastami Prabhu.
You spent a lot of time speaking about how we are oftentimes hurt in the material world, and there's one.
And in the spiritual world too, at least the part of it that's manifested in this world, we also get hurt.
There's a quote from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that my good friend, I think also your good friend, Shesha Prabhu, had on his living room wall, and how to deal with pain. And I'll just read it.
Oh, please.
Look within, amend yourself, rather than pry into the frailties of others. In this world of Maya, adverse to the Lord, full of trials and tribulations, only patience, humility, and respect for others are our kind friends for Hari Bhajan. When faults in others misguide and delude you, have patience, introspect, find faults in yourself, know that others cannot harm you unless you harm yourself. Tasosmi Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So it's a pretty strong statement, and it's not always so easy to process. But one thing that, of course, there's tremendous validity in it, but it still seems that if we've been hurt by someone, disrespected, we're supposed to be Chanadapi Sunichena Taroriva Sahishnuna. But it seems that it's really important to approach this person and Guyamakyati, reveal one's mind in confidence in a way that doesn't damage the relationship, but actually enhances it. And there's the I message and the you message. You rascal! And it's when this happened, I felt so hurt. And then just explaining it without putting the finger of blame, but just expressing how one.
The mic real close.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did it again. All these hand gesticulations.
Can you tell that again, because that's really important for me to hear.
So, let's say we're hurt by somebody. They've not really respected us in such a way, and it just is so disturbing. So it may be difficult to process without some kind of guyam akyati, revealing one's mind in confidence. So that can be done. This is coming from modern American psychologists, is that you, rather than sending you messages, blaming, just say, when
you did this, you did this, you did this.
Yeah, no, don't do that, but just say, kind of describe it in a way that it's not the you, but when this took place, I was really hurt.
Yeah, the I.
I felt
I part of it.
I felt hurt by it. You know, it might not have been the right way to respond, but that's how it came, and it's staying with me. And that's why Guyam Mankyati Prichati, I'm revealing my mind to you. And any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Brajabihari Prabhu, who's the head of the ISKCON Resolve and mediation, conflict resolution within ISKCON, he describes the same thing in a slightly different way. He talks about how we're all very aware of our intention, but we're not understanding the impact we have. So like I see John Mastami and I go up and I say, Prabhu, you ought to do blah, 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 blah. My intention was to do something nice, or to give some guidance, or tell a joke, or whatever it was. But I don't know the impact. So maybe the way I said it, just using this as an example as old friends, the way I said it, I don't understand how it triggers something in you, or it brings out some pain in you, or you're having a really tough week, and that was just the last straw that kind of broke the camel's back. So I know my intention, and I can't figure out why you're so upset. It's like, hey, I meant well. Give me a break. Give me credit for my intentions. Well, yeah, but I, Anuttama, need to think more about what the impact is. So that's, another way of understanding that what you do caused this impact on me. So expressing it in such a way to others when there are disagreements or conflicts, to whatever, as best we can. And also, I think there's another thing. I mean, I've experienced this in my life. I don't know if I've ever read this. There's probably a lot of examples from Prabhupada. The fact is, a lot of times, people aren't ready to get the message. Isn't it like we went Harinam? I was noticing the other day. Some people walk by, they're like, wow, this is great, this is cool. Other people, they're like, turning the other way. Like, they should lock you people up because you're blocking the sidewalk, even though you're 100 feet from me. You're disturbing my sense gratification. You shouldn't be allowed to be here, and everything in between. And they're a soul, they're an individual. They're approaching Krishna or not, or hiding from Krishna as they want. So we have to try to see how to approach them. I know there's at least one story I think of, a couple, where Prabhupada was on a morning walk with some devotees, and he stopped. There was some guy sitting in a car, and I think maybe they saw him one day, and then there was a series of days. Prabhupada went over, knocked on his window, said, good morning. Guy rolled down his window, Prabhupada said, good morning. Then they kept on their walk. It's like, there's definitely a story I heard Ravinda Supa, I heard him personally tell this story. They were with Prabhupada in Philadelphia. They had kind of they call it, or I've lived, like a townhouse, like a duplex, two houses next to each other. So they walk out of the temple door, take a morning walk down the street. Prabhupada turns left, right back up to the house next door. There's a little old lady sitting on the porch. And all the devotees gather around to see what Prabhupada's going to tell her, right? Like, you're old and you better chant Hare Krishna, and the temple's next door, here's your last chance, whatever. And Rabindranath said, I'm pretty close to quoting him. He said, it blew our minds, right? Deep philosophical concept appropriate to the young people in the 60s. It blew our minds because Prabhupada just talked old people talk. Old people talk, which, how many teeth do you have? How many grandchildren do you have? Stuff like that. Why? Well, we can't say for sure. But from a communications discipline, this is an elderly lady that's living next to a bunch of wild 20-year-old Hare Krishnas who get up and start beating drums at 4 o'clock in the morning. Probably whatever award-winning roses she used to have disappear every morning during the night, and, everything else. And, she just has to pick up the phone and call the police, and it's over. So, Prabhupada's building a relationship with her according to where she's coming from. So at least she'll think at least one of those people's nice. These guys are nuts, but their teacher's a good person, right? Same thing in 26 2nd Avenue across town. Prabhupada said he it doesn't say made a point, but it mentions he made friends with Mr. Chuti, who was maybe not the owner, at least the manager, I can't remember. And Mr. Chuti didn't like the devotees because they were just a bunch of immature, crazy, young kids. But Prabhupada made friends with them. So Time, place, and circumstance. Thank you. Yeah, and it's not easy. I mean, that's why we got to help each other as best we can. And part of it, too, is, I mean, I've experienced in my years, I mean, I've been around for a while now, 50 years. I'm same, right? You came 77, 78?
77.
Yeah, so
almost
like
48 now.
Okay, so that's a few years. You can't expect everybody to do everything that we know we're supposed to do, you know. And I know in one of the leadership, GBC College, I don't know, some of you maybe took that, they talk about one thing that different personalities, I was thinking I got to look this up again so I learn it better. They talk about an allowable like defect or something, you know. So the person who's super artistic doesn't necessarily appreciate your input, right? The person who's really good about being systematic isn't very good about seeing other ways of doing things. The person who's a really good, like, there was something in Denver called the People's Fair. And my wife sometimes reminds me, she'll say, you're slipping into your People's Fair mode. Because the People's Fair in Denver was we had a 10 by 10 foot booth, and we distributed a lot of prasadam, and people would come and spend $5, get a plate of prasadam. And volunteers would come. And my mind was get the prasadam out, get the $5, get the people through here, we got stuff to do, we got souls to save. And I was having a great time. And volunteers would come for like 2 hours, and I'm like, thanks for coming, get to work. You know, and my wife's telling me, you're going to burn these people out. You can't do this booth by yourself. Who's more important, the person that may be buying prasadam the first time, or the devotee volunteer who came to help out for 2 hours and left their kids with their husband and, you know, had to park and walk 1.5 miles to get here? And she shows up, and all you can do is tell her she's late, which is, in my mind, you're late. Don't you realize what we got to do here? So it's like, okay, gulp. You know, who's more important? So not all of us have all of those skills. Some of us are very sensitive. You know, remember like Sudharma Dasi, who passed away a few years ago? I asked her one time, because she was a really good manager. She worked well with women, and she worked good with men. And I asked one time, I said, how do you do that? I wish I had that skill. She said, it's really easy. When I talk with ladies, of course you can't overly generalize, but there's some validity here. She said, when I talk with ladies, I ask them, how do you feel about this? When I talk with men, I say, what do you think about this? Because you ask a typical man, how do you feel about that? What? Like, you know, you meet somebody, like, how'd you feel about the Sunday Feast Kirtan yesterday? Feel about the Kirtan? It was a great Kirtan. I think they did a really good job. I think it was really inspiring for everybody. Think. But when you say feel, like we, you know, it's like we have feelings, ladies. We're not autotrons. Please give us your mercy. But we're not in touch with them. We're not in touch with them so much. So we have to get in touch with that side, understand our strengths, understand maybe we're not so well-rounded, and work on it. And at the same time, kind of, you know, give ourselves and give other people a break, because we're not all pure devotees and we bring our baggage in. And so, you know, maybe I was okay at organizing stuff, but my People's Fair mode didn't work for everybody. You got to watch that. So, yeah. We got to give each other a break, be forgiving, at the same time, be really, pray to Krishna we can learn to help overcome whatever shortcomings we have, which we all have. And remember, the real example of compassion is standing here on the altar in a few different forms, and he's sitting over there on the chair, and the rest of us are just trying. You know, that's our real shelter. And they're here, like we're reading about, like the sun. Narada Muni's like the sun that goes all over the universe, just concerned about the welfare of everyone. Wow. I want to be with him, and I want to be like him, isn't it? So that's the, like I started out, right? What did I say? The wonders of bhakti. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Govinda ki jai. UK devotees ki jai. New York devotees ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo.